Condom Becha coat. The patched up coat. This is recognized as the pioneering color film in Malayalam cinema. In his humble, patched coat, Mamad the cobbler is on his way to bid farewell to a Hajj-bound traveler. Mamad yearns to make the Hajj pilgrimage himself, but his lack of funds leaves him disheartened. A boy was in danger of being hit by Alakoya Haji's car, a wealthy businessman's vehicle, but Mamad acted quickly to save him. Avaran, Alakoya Haji's brother-in-law, came to see Mamad. They discussed Amina, Hassan, and Kunjivi, who were left in Avaran's care after their father, Avaran's elder brother, went to Singapore many years prior. The presence of Amina and her children is a source of constant irritation to Kadisa, Avaran's wife, who expresses her displeasure through unkind actions. Because of Hassan's childish innocence, Kadisa's anger towards him grows. Avaran arrives at his home. He consistently treats Amina as if she were his sister. When Kadisa began to beat Hassan, Avaran immediately stopped her. He then instructed her to care for Hassan as if he were her own, given her childless state. Despite their mutual affection, Kunjivi refused Amar's request to pose for a photo, explaining it was forbidden according to her beliefs. He eventually talks her into posing for one photo. However, when he tries to take more, she puts her foot down. He then lightheartedly teases her about her resistance. At Alakoya's home, Amar arrives, soaked from the rain. Alakoya is deeply concerned for his son, having lost his wife, Amar's mother, long ago. Kunjivi received a harsh scolding from Kadisa for her late arrival, with Kadisa alleging that she was attempting to lure Amar. After Amina strikes Kunjivi, Kadisa reminds them of the vast difference in their social standing, stating that Alakoya's wealth makes Kunjivi's aspirations of marrying Amar futile. Upon his arrival, Avaran challenges Kadisa, leading to a heated argument where she retaliates. With comforting words, Amina reassured Kunjivi, saying that her father would come back and make her wish of marrying Amar come true. Avaran broaches the topic of Amar and Kunjivi's romantic involvement with Alakoya. Alakoya responds positively, agreeing to their potential union. Alakoya's acceptance of the marriage is contingent on Avaran paying a 2,000 rupee dowry for Kunjivi. He requests Avaran to communicate this to Kunjivi's father by mail, while simultaneously emphasizing his need for prompt payment. Hassan, filled with longing for his father, declares his plan to journey to Singapore and bring him home. Kadisa, however, responds with derisive laughter. Mamad paid a visit to Amina, and she proceeded to ask him about his preparations for the Hajj. Mamad, a poor cobbler, has been painstakingly saving for 40 years. He sadly recounts to Amina how he was once robbed, losing all his hard-earned money. Amina presented him with a monetary offer, which Mamad respectfully declined. Kunjivi, in an attempt to connect with Mamad, suggests he view her as his own daughter. This then brings forth the sorrowful revelation that Mamad once had a daughter who died young. After blessing her to find a fitting husband, Mamad leaves. Alakoya shares with Kadisa his decision to arrange Amar's marriage to Kunjivi. Kadisa counters by stating that Amar's marriage to a different girl would yield a greater dowry, making it a more financially advantageous arrangement. With a lighthearted laugh, Alakoya disregards Kadisa's words, making it clear that Amar's happiness is what truly matters to him. During a conversation with Nabisu, Alakoya's servant, Kadisa learns that Kunjivi's father is probably gone for good. Nabisu advises Kadisa to concentrate on Avaran, and make sure he does not sell his property for Kunjivi's wedding expenses. Kadisa went to Avaran and made a direct request for him to place his properties under her ownership. However, he declined to do so. Kadisa, seething with anger, receives a gesture of kindness from Kunjivi, who offers her food. However, Kadisa responds by throwing the food directly at Kunjivi. Amina stepped in, hoping to bring peace to the conflict, but Kadisa remained adamant and refused to heed her words. Amina pleads for their patience, stating that they will be moving out of the house in just a few days. A group comes to Alakoya's residence, selling tickets for a drama performance that will raise money to feed poor children. Alakoya expresses his disapproval, stating that theatrical performances are forbidden for them. His friend, however, proposes a compromise, asking Alakoya to provide the financial support, while the friend personally attends the drama. Two goons approach Kunjivi with malicious intent, attempting to harass her. She makes an effort to escape their grasp, but finds herself trapped. Amar arrives in the nick of time, confronting the goons. He overpowers them, saving Kunjivi from harm. Though he saves Kunjivi, Amar is hurt in the process. Kunjivi, without hesitation, removes her headscarf and uses it to tend to his injury. Amar's arrival home raises Alakoya's suspicion, as he appears unwell. Alakoya's fears are confirmed when he finds a wound on Amar's hand, and he becomes alarmed. Amar, attempting to downplay the incident, states that he had a fall while riding his bicycle. Alakoya then orders his servant to immediately contact a doctor. Simultaneously, Kunjivi enters the house. Hassan, with his naive and observant nature, notices the absence of her headscarf and, without hesitation, calls Amina and Kadisa to bring it to their attention. Kunjivi receives a scolding from both Amina and Kadisa. Kadisa accuses her of dressing like an infidel. Amina then questions Kunjivi. After Kunjivi discloses what happened, Kadisa warns Amina to keep Kunjivi away from Amar, stating that their marriage is far from guaranteed. At that moment, Avaran returns, bringing a letter from Amina's husband. The letter announces his departure from Singapore in 2 weeks, with Kunjivi's wedding planned for his homecoming. Hassan and Kunjivi appear, and the atmosphere becomes filled with happiness. Following this, Avaran makes his way to Alakoya's residence to communicate the information. Mamad arrives, and they share the joyful news of the letter with him. Mamad, with a kind heart, offers to make a special sandal for Kunjivi's wedding. Within the market, Mamad is subjected to teasing because of his worn, patched coat. Kadisa seeks out Alakoya for another conversation, during which she reiterates her strong disapproval of the marriage between Amar and Kunjivi. Alakoya, displaying rising anger, attempts to brush her off. However, Kadisa's sudden declaration that Kunjivi suffers from leprosy causes him to react with stunned disbelief. Alakoya's demeanor shifts to one of tension. Kadisa seizes the opportunity to press him to abandon the wedding arrangements. Alakoya, however, is consumed by the fear of how such a decision would affect Amar's feelings. Kadisa attempts to reassure Alakoya, stating that Amar would easily adjust and be happy if he were to marry a different bride. Alakoya proposes taking Kadisa to a doctor for confirmation of leprosy. Kadisa declines, saying there's no need for such measures. Alakoya's suspicions are ignited. He sees through Kadisa's deceitful plan. Overwhelmed by anger, he harshly scolds Kadisa. Avaran's arrival interrupts the situation, and he informs Alakoya about the letter from his elder brother. The two men then reach an agreement to proceed with the wedding in 1 month's time. Everyone is eagerly anticipating Amina's husband's return. They are all waiting when Hassan arrives with a telegram. Amar reads the telegram, revealing the tragic passing of Amina's husband. The news causes everyone to collapse with grief. When the news reaches Mamad, he is overcome with sadness, understanding that the circumstances have made Kunjivi's wedding impossible. Amar's sadness manifests in his refusal to eat. Kadisa exacerbates his distress by taunting him with the claim that Alakoya will not allow him to marry without a dowry. Amar, reaching his breaking point, erupts in anger. Alakoya, having overheard the escalating disturbance, arrives and sharply rebukes Kadisa for her actions in upsetting Amar. He sternly warned Kunjivi against meddling in Amar's affairs and then dismissed her. Alakoya expresses his consent to Amar's marriage to Kunjivi, but clarifies that the arrangement is contingent upon the payment of a dowry. Alakoya tells that his unwillingness for Amar to marry a girl without dowry potential. He also evokes Amar's sympathy by reminding him of the difficulties he faced raising him as a widower. He tells Amar to abandon any thoughts of Kunjivi. Until that point, Amar had consistently shown unwavering obedience to his father. Contrary to his usual behavior, Amar passionately declares his unwavering commitment to Kunjivi. Alakoya, in a sudden burst of rage, slaps his son. Amar begins to cry, and Alakoya instantly feels remorse for his actions. He embraces Amar and expresses his apologies. Alakoya requests Avaran's presence. He then proceeds to ask Avaran whether he has taken any steps to obtain the dowry. Avaran conveys his inability to provide the dowry. He then pleads with Alakoya to grant him a favor by waiving the dowry requirement. Kadisa interrupts, accusing Avaran of hypocrisy. She reminds him that he accepted a dowry during her wedding, and questions why he is now asking Alakoya to waive it for Kunjivi. This leaves Avaran speechless. Kadisa engages in a conversation with Alakoya's servant, during which she proposes that the Kadisa remove Amina and her family from the premises, in an attempt to alleviate the current difficulties. Hassan approaches Amina, requesting food, only to find Amina and Kunjivi sitting on the floor in deep sorrow. Avaran then enters and asks what has caused their sadness. Kunjivi explains that they have not cooked anything today. Avaran instructs her to retrieve rice from the room and begin preparing a meal. Kunjivi informs them that Kadisa has secured the room with a lock and taken the key, thus preventing anyone from entering. Avaran, in a fit of anger, confronts Kadisa about her deeds. She was ready for his reaction. She resorts to verbal abuse. She cruelly suggests he marry Amina. Avaran is appalled, since he regards Amina as his sister. In a moment of extreme anger, Avaran retrieves a machete with the intent to kill Kadisa. Fortunately, Hassan and Kunjivi manage to stop him before he can inflict harm. The commotion stops when they see Amina coming out of her room with all her belongings. She declares that they are all leaving the house. Avaran makes a desperate attempt to prevent them from leaving, but Amina is unwavering. She offers Kadisa a plea for forgiveness and then walks away. Overwhelmed by emotion, Avaran begins to cry. Lost and without direction, Amina and her children walk onward. Mamad approaches them, running, and says he has learned about what transpired. He guides them to his small hut, his only dwelling. Hassan, concerned for Amina, asks for a mat to make her comfortable. Mamad, living a very simple life, had no mat to provide. The sole thing he could offer was his prayer mat, which he used for his daily prayers. Mamad, demonstrating his profound sense of humanity, sets aside his religious practices and offers his prayer mat to Amina. With a tender look towards Kunjivi, he states that his daughter's spirit remains. He considers Kunjivi to be just like his own daughter. Kunjivi reciprocates, saying that Mamad is like her own father, and they hug. He takes a pair of sandals from a box and gives them to Kunjivi, saying they were made for his daughter. Avaran arrives in tears, lamenting his inability to help. He hugs Hassan, then attempts to give Amina money, which she declines, pointing out that Hassan's labor has provided for them. Avaran becomes deeply sentimental, and Kunjivi joins the emotional gathering. Amina voices her lingering sadness about the wedding being called off. Avaran, filled with a renewed sense of purpose, declares he will not allow it to remain cancelled and then departs with haste. Alakoya, with a father's concern, tries to convince Amar to consider another marriage. Amar, however, remains resolute in his affections. Alakoya, seeing his son's unwavering love, finally gives his consent for Amar to marry Kunjivi, resulting in Amar's immediate excitement. However, Alakoya imposes a condition. The dowry must be provided within 2 weeks, or Amar will be forced to marry the bride Alakoya selects. Amar, in a tone of despair, explains that they are struggling to even afford food. Alakoya, with a sense of detachment, states that their financial woes are not his responsibility. He grants Amar a 2-week deadline. Avaran intends to pledge his house and properties to obtain the dowry money for Kunjivi, but he is dependent on Kadisa's signature. Kadisa's refusal to sign the documents sparks a verbal altercation. The dispute quickly escalates, and Avaran, in a moment of anger, grabs Kadisa's hair. Alakoya, hearing the commotion, runs in and forcefully intervenes, pushing Avaran away. Avaran's head impacts a nearby table. Kadisa departs the scene with Alakoya. Avaran is confined to his bed, recovering from his injuries. Kunjivi and Mamad provide him with attentive care. Hassan arrives with the necessary medication for Avaran. Alakoya is determined that Kadisa should dissolve her marriage with Avaran. Kadisa, however, is resistant, asserting that Avaran did not inflict any harm upon her. Alakoya, perplexed, then presses her to explain why she was crying. Kadisa admits her tears were a ploy to intimidate Avaran. Alakoya then tells Kadisa to go back to Avaran and not to return to him. Alakoya, displaying his growing impatience, calls Amar and sharply reprimands him for his apparent disregard for his health and hygiene. He then firmly reminds Amar that the 2-week deadline for the dowry is approaching, and he has yet to receive any indication of progress. Alakoya declares to Amar that he is planning to set up his wedding with a different woman in the near future, and that Amar should prepare himself. During the stillness of the night, while Alakoya was deep in sleep, Amar crept into his room, retrieved the key, and proceeded to attempt to steal money from the safe. Sadly for Amar, Alakoya awoke and witnessed the attempted theft. Alakoya realized Amar's intent to use the stolen money for Kunjivi's dowry, which enraged him. Amar then boldly declared he would marry Kunjivi regardless of the dowry. Alakoya attempted to strike Amar, but was prevented. He then forcibly pushed Amar into a room and locked the door. On the next day, Alakoya calls Kadisa, assigning her the task of guarding Amar. He announces that he is departing to arrange Amar's wedding and will be gone for a few days. Alakoya departs for a far-off town. Hassan discovers Kunjivi, overcome with grief, clutching Amar's photo. He becomes angry and demands that she forget about Amar. He blames her for their displacement, stating that they were forced to leave their home because of her. He reminds her of Avaran's injury and yet she still yearns for Amar. In a fit of anger, he tears the photo to shreds. Amina, hearing the raised voices, comes to investigate. Hassan, still seething, explains the situation to her. In his intense frustration, he makes a chilling statement, suggesting that Kunjivi's life is not worth living. Amina, overcome with anger and disbelief, delivers a sharp slap to Hassan for his callous words. Kunjivi, her spirit crushed by his harsh statement, is drawn to the sound of a train's whistle in the distance. Amina reprimands Hassan. Hassan then directs his anger towards Kunjivi, making derogatory remarks. Mamad intervenes, demanding Hassan stop speaking ill of his sister. In his frustration, Hassan exclaims that they would have been better off born as infidels, as it wouldn't have been so hard to arrange his sister's marriage. Mamad admonishes him, stating that even harboring such thoughts could be considered infidelity. Mamad then realizes Kunjivi is gone and sets out to find her. Meanwhile, Kunjivi, in a state of despair, walks onto the railway tracks, intending to end her life. A train approaches in the distance. Mamad witnesses this, but his age prevents him from running quickly. With barely a moment to spare, Mamad managed to push Kunjivi to safety, preventing a tragic accident. He then brought her back to the comfort of their home. Amina reminds them that the divine has ordained a time for each person's departure, therefore, impulsive actions like Kunjivi's are ill-advised. The distressing news of Kunjivi's attempt on her life reaches Amar, filling him with a sense of urgency and anxiety. He quickly removes the roof tiles from his confinement and climbs out, determined to reach her. Amar made a daring escape through the roof, resulting in a fall that he miraculously survived. Upon finding Kunjivi, he was met with a frosty reception. He told her he had been locked away. She responded by telling him to return to his father. Amar begs Kunjivi for forgiveness, explaining that he was bound by his father's commands. He declares that he has severed all ties and is now independent. However, she disregards him and walks away. Hassan, filled with resentment, confronts Amar, unleashing a torrent of angry words. Amar, seeking forgiveness, apologizes, explaining that his actions were driven by his father's commands. Hassan demands to know if his love for Kunjivi was a matter of paternal sanction, and if the subject of dowry even crossed his mind during their courtship. Amar, overcome with shame, stood with his head bowed. Hassan then ordered Amar to leave. Amina attempted to intervene. Hassan was about to physically attack Amar when Kunjivi stepped between them. However, Hassan pushed her aside, causing her to fall. Hassan, fueled by anger, picks up a stick and prepares to strike Amar. Kunjivi, attempting to shield Amar, once again positions herself between them. Tragically, Hassan strikes her with the stick, causing her harm. Mamad, sensing the escalating violence, runs in and intervenes, preventing Hassan from causing further harm. Hassan, overwhelmed by his actions, breaks down and begins to cry uncontrollably. Amar arrives back at his residence, leading Kadisa to wonder how he managed to escape his confinement. Mamad, who had followed him, then asks Kadisa about Alakoya's location. She replies that Alakoya is currently out of town. He reveals that Kunjivi nearly died attempting to take her own life on the railway tracks. Nabisa inquires as to why he is so deeply invested in the well-being of others. Mamad explains that they are all part of the Prophet Muhammad's Ummah, emphasizing their shared familial bond. Kadisa then informs him that Alakoya will not return for several days. Mamad was about to depart when Amar exited his room, noticing Mamad's presence. Mamad then revealed that he had come to speak with Alakoya, hoping to change his mind. Amar, with a tone of resignation, describes the people in his home as being made of stone, implying their stubbornness and lack of empathy. He then extends an invitation for Mamad to leave with him. Kadisa, with concern, asks Amar where he plans to go. Amar's response, that he intends to marry Kunjivi, leaves Kadisa in a state of disbelief. She tries to physically prevent him, but he forcefully pushes her out of the way. Following their deliberation, they determined that a telegram should be dispatched to Alakoya. Amar and Mamad approach Hassan. Amar, with sincerity, apologizes to Hassan again. He implores Hassan to grant him permission to marry Kunjivi before Alakoya's impending arrival. He insists that, given Alakoya's return the day after tomorrow, the marriage to Kunjivi must occur tomorrow. Mamad is deeply concerned about the potential retaliation from Alakoya. After considerable persuasion, Hassan finally agreed. The wedding ceremony unfolded the next day. Moments before the marriage was finalized, Alakoya emerged from seemingly nowhere, bellowing for the proceedings to cease. Those gathered implore Alakoya to permit the wedding to be completed. But when Amar dares to speak, Alakoya cuts him off, his voice filled with menace, declaring he will take Amar's life. Amar tells him to kill him if he must. He says that he has always followed Alakoya's orders, but today he will have his say. He proclaims his love for Kunjivi and asserts that she has done no wrong. She is without the means to provide a dowry, but it is the divine who grants all sustenance. He could, with ease, render Alakoya penniless. The remark ignited Alakoya's fury. He was poised to deliver a blow to Amar, but a timely intervention prevented him. Mamad expresses his disappointment, stating that a person who has completed Hajj should behave differently. Alakoya insists that his religious journey does not exempt him from demanding the dowry. He then tries to drag Amar away. Mamad challenges Alakoya, stating, "If this dowry money outweighs your faith, your pilgrimage, and your own flesh and blood, then I will give you what you demand." Mamad takes off his heavily patched coat. As he tears open each patch, money spills out. He had concealed his years of savings, meant for his Hajj, inside the coat to protect them from thieves. That was the reason he constantly wore the coat. Mamad, with a heavy heart, discloses that this money was his lifelong dream of performing Hajj this year. Yet, he believes that ensuring the marriage of an orphaned girl, which is contingent on a dowry, is a more righteous act, his own personal Hajj. He gives the money to Alakoya. But Alakoya feels insulted and throws away the money. He says he will not accept Cobbler's money. Mamad retorts that there is no such thing as Cobbler's money. This money represents years of hard-earned labor. Avaran points out that Alakoya has strayed from his faith and forgotten God. He emphasizes the profound value of the money, as Mamad had diligently saved it for years for his Hajj pilgrimage. The crowd joins in, criticizing Alakoya's behavior. Mamad estimates the amount to be close to 2,000 rupees and asks everyone to contribute whatever they can to reach that sum. Mamad clarifies that this is not a charitable donation. He assures everyone that he will repay every single penny. A wave of people surged forward, throwing money at Alakoya's face, a stinging rebuke that left him utterly speechless. Mamad laughs and declares that religious beliefs exist to foster human goodness. He argues that without genuine goodness, religious practices are in vain. Mamad challenges Alakoya, "Are you not a Muslim?" Alakoya remains silent. Umar then demands that Alakoya answer Mamad. He further states that he and Alakoya are no longer father and son. Alakoya was utterly crushed by Umar's words, leaving him emotionally broken. Mamad, seeing Alakoya's state, angrily commands Umar to immediately apologize to his father for the hurtful statements he made. Alakoya, overcome with remorse, hugs Mamad and begs for his forgiveness. A wave of apologies then washes over the group, as they all seek to mend the fractured relationships. Alakoya suggests that they proceed with the wedding ceremony. The family members come together in joyful unity. Mamad declares his Hajj fulfilled now, but Alakoya disagrees. Alakoya, moved by Mamad's sacrifice, sends him on the Hajj pilgrimage. Umar, with affection, gifts him a pair of sandals. Umar vows to display Mamad's patched-up coat as a powerful example to those who are religious in name but not in deed. Mamad says his farewells to everyone and begins his journey to Hajj. The movie ends.